Before continuing to listen to this message, answer yourself honestly. How long have you been praying for the same answer, and yet everything seems to remain silent? Perhaps you have begun to think that God has forgotten you. But what if this silence is not a sign of abandonment? What if right now, when nothing seems to be happening, God is preparing the miracle that will transform your story? Today, you will discover why you should never give up before seeing God's work, and how to recognize that He continues to work, even when everything seems completely at a standstill. But there is a truth that few understand. The greatest miracles in the Bible began when everything seemed completely at a standstill. Throughout this message, you will see how to identify the signs that God is already acting, even when your eyes cannot yet perceive what He is preparing. Perhaps the answer you so desperately await has already begun, just in a way you cannot yet see. Have you ever wondered why God seems to remain silent precisely when you most need an answer? This is one of the greatest tests of Christian faith, and it was no different for many men and women in the Bible before they experienced great promises. The silence never meant that God had given up on them, but that something greater was being prepared. Have you ever experienced this? Stay with me in this reflection, because what you are about to discover may change the way you see this waiting period and profoundly strengthen your trust in God's actions. The biggest mistake we can make is believing that God is only acting when we can see some change. In fact, many of the greatest transformations begin behind the scenes. While you imagine that nothing has happened, God may be aligning decisions, preparing people, strengthening your mindset, and guiding every detail for the right time. The absence of visible signs has never been proof of God's absence. Often, heaven remains silent because God is working in areas we cannot yet understand. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject because there is a hidden truth about this waiting period that can completely change how you see this journey. Write it in the comments. That makes sense to me. Often, before changing the situation around you, God chooses to transform what happens within you. It is in this process that He strengthens your faith, matures your decisions, and molds your mindset so that the miracle is not only received but sustained. This preparation may seem silent, but it carries profound revelations that will impact your entire journey. When the heart is strengthened, even waiting takes on a new meaning, because trust becomes greater than anxiety. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject because there is a reason why so many promises seem to take so long to be fulfilled. Write it in the comments. God is preparing my heart. Before witnessing the fulfillment of promises, many servants of God endured long periods of waiting. Joseph spent years between imprisonment and his purpose. Abraham needed to trust when everything seemed contrary to the promise. David was anointed king long before he ascended the throne. In each story, the behind-the-scenes waiting produced transformation, maturity, and revelations that only made sense later. God's timing was never wasted. It was always preparation for a greater impact. If they had given up halfway, they would never have witnessed what God had already determined. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there is a hidden truth about waiting that completely changes how we face today's struggles. Write in the comments, God's timing is perfect. It is precisely when discouragement tries to convince you to stop that many give up on what God is still building. The Bible repeatedly shows that perseverance is not just an attitude, but part of the transformation process. The answer may seem distant, but that doesn't mean it has ceased to exist. At many times, God is preparing the scene while strengthening your confidence so that when the promise arrives, you will recognize that everything happened at the right time. Each step taken in faith brings you closer to the purpose God has already established. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject because there is a detail that almost no one notices during the waiting period, and that can completely change your journey of faith. Write it in the comments. I will not give up. While you wait, God is also moving circumstances that your eyes cannot see. There are encounters being prepared, doors being closed for your protection, and new opportunities taking shape behind the scenes. Many answers depend on people, moments, and decisions that have not yet happened, but are already under God's control. Therefore, silence is not a sign that everything has stopped, but rather that a work is being built perfectly, even without applause or visible evidence. In due time, each piece of this purpose will find its place, revealing that God has never lost control of your story. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject because there are subtle signs that reveal when God continues to work, even if everything seems the same. Write in the comments, God is in control. Often, God leaves small signs along the way to strengthen our faith before the definitive answer arrives. A piece that doesn't make sense, a door that closes to prevent a mistake, an unexpected encounter, or a word that touches the heart can be evidence that He continues to guide every detail. These discrete revelations renew hope and transform our mindset, showing that heaven remains active even when everything seems still. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject because there is a truth that completely changes the way we see the time of waiting. Write it in the comments. God continues to work. Even when the wait seems long, God's faithfulness does not diminish for a moment. Circumstances may change, emotions may fluctuate, and days may seem the same, but God's character remains the same. This truth sustains those who continue walking, even without immediate answers. Each step of the journey strengthens their confidence, shapes their mindset, and reveals that God's behind-the-scenes work always produces a greater impact than we can imagine. Those who remain steadfast discover that God is never late. He always arrives at the perfect moment. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject because there is one last principle that shows why the miracle begins long before it becomes visible to our eyes. Write it in the comments. I choose to trust. What almost no one realizes is that every miracle begins in the invisible. Before the sea parted, God already had a way prepared. Before Lazarus came out of the tomb, Jesus had already declared that that situation would not end in death. God's action always begins before what our eyes can see. That's why faith doesn't depend on evidence, but on the certainty that God continues to fulfill every promise in perfect timing. Even when everything seems impossible, God has already begun a transformation that will be revealed at the right moment. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject because there is a final decision that can define how this story will be remembered in your life. Write it in the comments. My miracle has already begun. Before making any decision based solely on how you feel today, remember everything we've seen so far. Silence has never been the final chapter in the story of those who chose to trust in God. Often what seems like a delay is actually a process of preparation, strengthening, and spiritual growth. It was behind the scenes that the greatest transformations, the most important decisions, and the revelations that changed destinies took place. Perhaps you still can't see the impact of this waiting period. Perhaps some prayers still seem unanswered and some doors are still closed, but that doesn't mean God has stopped working. While you wait, He continues to work, aligning paths and preparing what your eyes cannot yet perceive. Your story didn't end in that moment of silence. God is still writing chapters you can't even imagine. And what seems confusing today may become one of the greatest proofs of His faithfulness tomorrow. Continue to nurture your hope, because God's promise doesn't depend on circumstances, but on the faithfulness of the one who promised. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there's a question that may linger in your heart for the next few days. What if the day you've been praying for is closer than you think? Write it in the comments. I will stand firm. If this message resonated with you, continue strengthening your faith through the Word of God and subscribe to the channel to follow new reflections. If you made it to the end, write, "I've stayed this far." May God continue to guide your journey.